I've pursued success in a variety of areas as an athlete, then as a lawyer. That was a disaster. Then again as an athlete, now as a podcaster. It's funny, you know, I went through like a 7-year financial dismantlement. Like we almost had our house repossessed. I had our cars repossessed. I couldn't pay for the garbage bins. Like it was bad. And I think with that was a tremendous amount of emasculation.
Protector, provider.
Yeah. And a huge resurgence of all the insecurities and fears that I harbored as a child. And I became utterly convinced that I was incapable of success, at least financial success. I just didn't believe that it was possible for me. When I was a drunk, I could never pay my bills. I ruined my credit. Then I get sober and I can't figure out this career thing. And I was as broke as ever. And then I'm trying
not even drunk this time.
I'm not even drinking and I can't figure it out. And then I'm like, oh, I'm going to go be an ultra athlete when I have little kids and a mortgage. There's no career path in that. And I just thought maybe I'm insane. Like I honestly thought like I would find myself, you know, at times on a weekday afternoon at the park with my small children, pushing them on the swings and having this tension between these two ideas. On the one hand, recognizing that by leaving the comforts of the partnership track at a big law firm, I had the privilege of being able to spend time with my young children in the middle of a weekday afternoon at this park where there was a bunch of moms and I'm the only guy, while also believing at the same time that I was an utter failure because I didn't know what I was doing with my life. I didn't have a sense of what I should do or shouldn't do, and really starting to believe that nothing was ever going to happen for me.
So this is one of the problems that I have with the modern move of asceticism, right? Of recanting worldly success, because I believe that inbuilt in almost all humans is a requirement for the world to validate them genuinely through actual achievement. And this is another Naval quote where he says, "It is far easier to achieve our material desires than to renounce them." And the difference is, had you have had the material success now, then how much more present would you have been with your children pushing them on the swing?
Well, had I had material success earlier, I wouldn't have grown and evolved mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically
because of the Phoenix and the Flames thing.
Yeah, I had to endure that process to be worthy of the growth curve that I've been on. And frankly, you know, the success that I have now is embarrassing because I never would have thought it possible. So my relationship with success now is very different than it would have been had I achieved it earlier or easier, I guess.
I've heard you say, I still find myself with this sense that success has to be earned, and the only way to earn it is to inflict pain on yourself. And if you're not in pain, you didn't try hard enough. And it would have been better if you'd suffered more. And I think that's a lie. And I want to find out if it's a lie or if it's true. That resonated with me so much. Tell me what you meant by that.
I don't think that I'm particularly gifted in any kind of traditional way. I don't think I'm that much smarter than anyone else. I don't think that I'm a super talented athlete. But if I had to identify a talent, it would be a capacity to suffer, a willingness to do hard shit, and a very high pain tolerance. And I learned this as a young swimmer entering into the kind of club ecosystem of swimming in the Northeast where I lived, and realizing quickly as a 13-year-old that I was not the most talented swimmer, that there were a lot of young, gifted swimmers who were much better than me. But I also realized very quickly that there was an equation between work and results. And that equation was pure arithmetic for me. And the more I worked, the narrower that gap, that talent deficit gap became, to the point where, as a senior in high school, I was one of the best swimmers in the United States, getting recruited everywhere, and was able to match all of those peers that previously I thought were much more talented than me. So the message that got inculcated in my mind was, talent doesn't matter. You have the ability to outwork everyone in the room. That is your gift. And your job is to double down on that in all areas of your life. And this is what is going to create a trajectory for you. And the truth is, it worked. It worked in the pool. It worked in the classroom. And I was able to achieve some pretty amazing things as a young person.
Outsized results beyond your talent level.
I was world ranked in the 200-meter butterfly. I went on to Stanford. I said no to Harvard University and went to Stanford, where I was a member of a 2-time NC2A championship squad, where every single day I trained with world record holders, American record holders, NC2A champions, and Olympic gold medalists. These were my athletic heroes. And by sheer force of will, I told myself I was able to manifest a situation in which now I was a member of a team in which I got to spend 5 hours a day, every single day, with the greatest swimmers in the sport. What does that do to a young mind? It tells it you're capable of anything, but the only way that you're going to get there is by suffering. Suffering is your success equation. And I would do things in the pool in high school that my coaches to this day still talk about. They're like, remember when you did this set in 1984, like 40 times 200 fly on, like I would do insane sets that no one else would do because I knew no one else would do them. And I picked the hardest, the event that creates the most suffering, because that was the easiest to distinguish myself in. And that was a success equation. And so I've carried that my entire life. And to this day, as somebody who doesn't believe they're particularly talented, it's all the more important that I outwork everyone in the room. And I believe that in many ways, I've done that. And I kind of continue to do it. I've done it with the podcast. I've done it with books that I've written. If I don't suffer, if I'm not completely depleted at the end of a project and I turn it in, whether it's a book or whatever creative thing that I'm working on, then it's not good enough. You have to bleed in order for it to be the highest expression of what you're capable of. And the truth is, through a lot of therapy, a lot of work, I have realized that that is in fact a lie. Now, untangling that knot and trying to create new neural pathways is extremely uncomfortable. What does it feel like if you sit down and you write something and you do it from a place of ease and presence and awareness, and you turn it in and it didn't cause you to suffer and you didn't experience pain? I'm instantly going to feel like, well, that's shit. I didn't work hard enough for it. I didn't earn it. Give me that back and let me rewrite it until 4 in the morning, and I've done this many, many times. And then I'll look at it with clear eyes the next day and realize you made it worse.
First draft was better.
Yeah, you made it worse. It's a hard pill to swallow. It's been a very difficult lesson for me to learn. It's certainly not something that I've mastered, but I have created systems in my life that make that process of ease more accessible and conducive in my daily schedule, to try to disabuse me of these old patterns that are reliable, but ultimately are short-term strategies, because they lead to exhaustion and burnout and disaffection and all of these things that are at cross purposes with the goal of having any kind of longevity or continual growth in whatever it is that you're trying to do.
What are the systems?
I surround myself with a team of very talented people. So for a long time, I did my podcast, which I've been doing 11 years, almost 11 years at this point. For many years, I did almost every single aspect of it myself. My stepson, Tyler, would edit it. But other than that, I handled everything about it. And I was very resistant to letting go of any aspect of it and you're laughing, letting anybody come in to help me.
I can see some of my team over your shoulder.
Well, you have an amazing team here, right?
Yeah. But they know that they have to rip tasks out of my hand to fucking nail my nail.
I would rather forego nights of sleep.
Correct.
Than invite anyone else in, because you know what? I'm the only one who knows how to do it. I'm the only one who can get it the way that I want it to be. I'm the only one who's qualified to make it as good as I know it can be. And I'm the only one who's going to care enough to go that extra mile to make it great. Right. And the reason why I know
I can't stop grinning.
But the reason why that is so romantic and powerful is that there is some truth in it, because no one is going to care about modern wisdom as much as you. It doesn't matter how much you pay people or how talented the people are that are around you. So you're faced with a choice. Either you loosen the reins, you let people in, you find people who are better at their respective skill sets than you are, you train them, you empower them, and you get out of the way. And then you are freed up to do the work that only you can do, which is to prepare for and conduct the conversations to the best of your ability. Everything else can be handled by someone else. In my case, I did the show for years before I was kicking and dragging in order to let go. But as a result of going through that process, I now am able to focus on those things that are most important. And as to the freedom point, the systems that I have in place create the added time for the headspace required to contribute to the creative work that only I can do. And I create rules for myself. Like, you have to stop after 2 hours, or you're not allowed to, edit while you're writing, or, you have to put this away and not look at it for a week. Like, I have to create stop gaps.
Like a crazy person.
Yeah, exactly. Because I am a fucking crazy person.
Yeah.
Chris, I don't know if you know, but I have spent quite a bit of time in a mental institution. So yeah, I am certifiable.
My equivalent of the story that you told with regards to swimming was with my first business in nightlife. So I didn't draw the correlation between practice and game day ability throughout my entire athletic career. So I played at a very high level of cricket because I'm a gentleman and I'm refined.
Yes.
I played
that game that no one understands or cares about in the United States.
Well, I mean, look, if you weren't such Philistines, maybe you would be able to get on board. I trained a lot, but I trained a lot because it's how I found my friends and it's what I did. It was habit. I never, ever had it taught to me. No one ever sat me down and said, if you train, you get better. And I didn't feel that lesson. I knew that it was what you were supposed to do, but I didn't. Anyway. So I get to university and we start this events company, and it's the first thing that I've ever really felt like I excelled at and got social renown for. So very quickly, I begin to attach my sense of success to the success of the business. A lot of young, especially guys who want to be accepted. If you do have a business and you do find some success with it, you will do this. And it's a pitfall that you need to be aware of. And I imagine it's the same for girls too.
Mm-hmm.
You do a thing, the world tells you that you are enough, or that it praises you because you do the thing. Therefore, you become the thing. So it wasn't just, I ran a good or bad club night last Saturday. It was, I am a good or bad person.
No, you're self-identifying with the achievement as a referendum on who you are as a person.
Correct. And because I'm British, I've got a Puritan work ethic. And what I did was, this was the pernicious bit. And this is the pitfall that people really need to watch out for. I realized that reliably, the quality of my work was better if I suffered. Therefore, if I suffered, I usually got better outcomes.
And you feel good about yourself because you suffered.
Correct.
You worked for it, you earned it.
So the lead indicator of what would be a lagging measure, the lead indicator was suffering, the lagging measure would be success. Then, this is the thing that I did. I shortcutted the success part and went straight to the suffering part. And if success came without suffering, I felt like it wasn't worthy. I felt like I hadn't worked hard enough to get it. And I then had two things that I needed to do. So not only did the event need to be good, not only did it need to run well, if it wasn't a success, I was a failure. And if the success came and I hadn't suffered, I was also a piece of shit. So there was two ways
that's sort of akin to imposter syndrome, right? Like, it was successful. I didn't really work for it. I don't really deserve this. People are going to find out that I don't really know what I'm doing. Or is that something different?
Perhaps. I feel like there's probably a veneer of imposter syndrome in there too. But it felt more visceral than imposter syndrome. And it wasn't anxiety around it not happening well next time and me not being good enough. It was just that I needed to suffer. And that's what this Puritan work ethic thing does, man. And it's a hell of a drug, especially if you're from one of the imperial colonial powers. That you can imagine, in the Middle Ages, these priests, and they're hoeing the ground and the sun's beating down on their back and they're doing it in service of God. It's not about the work. It's about the suffering, and they've got a cat o' nine tails and they're flagellating themselves for penance.
We're sinners. We're bad people. We need to be punished. Let's flog ourselves. Let's do it in the context of our work and make that a spiritual practice.
But without the spiritualism, without any of the spiritual payoff. And that was where I got to. And you also said two other things that I thought was really, really interesting. And I thought about this when I spent a bit of time in CrossFit. And I saw a lot of people in CrossFit talk about suffering and discomfort and stuff. But if I told them to sit on the couch for a full week and not train, they would have completely gone crazy. And you said the real discomfort is to see what it would be like without the suffering. And Tim has this "what if it was easy" line.
Yeah,
and
that's the discipline. People always say to me, like, how do you do these ultra distance events, and how do you have the motivation to get up every day and train? And the math in their mind is that's where the discipline comes into play. But they don't realize is, like, that's what I want to do. That's what I prefer to do. Actually, certainly there's days you don't want to do it and you have to call on a little bit of discipline, but that's my joy. The discipline comes in when, yes, you're like, today's a rest day. You're not allowed to go do that thing that you enjoy doing. Or, you're going to sit and meditate for 30 minutes, or you're going to write something and, you're going to walk away from it and not edit it, or you're going to maybe only spend half the time you would ordinarily preparing for a podcast. You know what I mean? That's hard.
Fuck.
Going the extra mile is rote. That's second nature to me.
Yeah. It's fascinating. I find this quirk of a particular type of human very, very fascinating.
But I think a way in is to think of it in the context of flow states. And by that, I mean, can you inhabit a state of allowing? Can you be an open channel and in a disposition of surrender, where you are receiving almost like an antenna, as opposed to willing things, trying to make them happen? Again, I'll take it back to recovery. I mean, one of the first things you learn is your powerlessness over drugs and alcohol, and that the solution is not going to come as a result of you applying your will to this problem.
Or taking more drugs and alcohol.
It's like self-will run riot is what, it's like, I read that book, you guys, I get it, whatever, I'll figure it out, don't worry about it. And you're trying to solve a problem of the mind with the mind that created it. And you're going to do it by applying this incredible self-will that you have, only to discover that you're digging the hole deeper and deeper and deeper until you're so broken, you let go and you give up and you say, I can't do this alone. Please help me. Not only do I need help, I want help. I'm willing to receive help, and I will take the instruction that's given to me, which requires a tremendous amount of humility. So are you in self-will? Is that self-will out of balance with your life? And what would it feel like and look like to release your attachment to that self-will as an engine of identity and instead be in that very uncomfortable state of being and allowing.
I've heard you say before, the prize doesn't go to the fastest guy, it goes to the guy who slows down the least. That pressure of potential and pressure of consistency to me in all areas of life. You know, you were specifically not talking about racing. You were talking about this on-off burn and coast workload thing in professional life. How do you deal with that? You know, you've got this engine inside of you. I want to work. I care about the work that I do. I care about the things that I do. I want to serve, all the rest of it. How have you learned to switch yourself off, and what's the journey been like to releasing that right foot from the accelerator pedal?
It's been an interesting lesson that I have reluctantly embraced, I guess I would say. But you can't serve to your maximum effect if you're not also serving yourself. So you have to tend to the vessel if you want to be a vessel of good in the world. And when you're a workaholic, or you're someone who's prone to suffering and feels like your self-worth is tied up in going the extra mile, being in that place of letting go and allowing yourself to take time and step back is the most counterintuitive thing that you can possibly do. Again, that's the discipline. But the truth is, to the point of that quote, the prize doesn't go to the fastest. It goes to the person who slows down the least. That was originally said to me by my coach, my endurance coach. In ultra endurance, there's nothing about it that's fast. You could go out and run a mile right now faster than any of these ultra runners. But if you were to run a 10-minute mile, which is easy for most fit people, 130 times over, then you would crush the bad water and probably break the record. So it's not about fast. It's about the ability to persist. And your ability to persist is correlated with your capacity to conserve. You have to be able to mete out your energy in small bits in order to go the full distance. I'm somebody who's always thinking about the long term. I'm not somebody who's trying to create a viral hit or make a big splash tomorrow. I just do my daily work every single day. And I trust that as I continue to get better at what I do, that I hone my craft and that my focus is squarely placed on the things that are most important, that the success will come eventually. And as a result of that, as opposed to engineering success in some kind of fast track way. I think that's misguided. It may be effective in the short term, but what are you doing 10 years later? And I want to be somebody who can continue to do this thing that you and I both do for as long as possible. I've been doing it 11 years. As you know, it's taxing. It's a lot. I don't think it's as easy as people think. I think there's so much work, more work that goes into it than people realize. And in order to run that marathon, you have to take breaks. And it's scary to take breaks because if you're not doing, then who are you? The world is passing you by. You're going to miss out. All this forward momentum suddenly gets arrested. But I have learned that taking that time ultimately becomes a growth accelerator because that time is necessary to not only recharge your battery, but also to develop clarity around the how, what, and why of what the fuck you're doing.